What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have a Datura trip report for you. The title of this trip report is Stepping into the Spirit World, and was submitted to Erowid in 2011 by the user Alex. With all that being said, let our story begin. Revisiting this experience is somewhat difficult for me. The few hours I remember are some of the most frightening and potentially deadly I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing. I was 17 and rebellious. I grew up in a very conservative, wealthy family, and by my early teens, I found myself experimenting with pot, mostly out of my desperation for friends. By the time I was 17, I was regularly getting stoned and loving this new world I'd discovered. I was meeting people and spending time in places that my parents would have died had they ever found out about it. And I loved that. I loved the independence. I loved thinking I knew better. By the time I was about 17, the same group of friends that introduced me to pot had started talking about this thing called moonflower. Desperate to prove myself to these older, cooler guys, I told them I would love to try it, and we went on a search throughout the town to hopefully find some growing. We found a plant and took a few pods to one of the guys' homes. I don't remember how much I took that night, but it wasn't much. I remember going home pretty soon after and coaxing myself into thinking I was starting to trip out. I'd never done anything but smoke weed, so I didn't know what this was even supposed to do, but the little information they had given me led me to believe it was some kind of hallucinogen. That's literally all I knew about it. After that failed night, a few months had gone by, and I found myself at the local lake with some friends hanging out on the beach. I noticed some gigantic moonflower plants growing nearby, and upon closer inspection, I noticed that there were several huge spiny pods growing all around it. I picked 4 or 5 of the biggest ones and headed home. They looked kind of cool, so I lined them up on the TV in my room and kind of forgot about them. A couple days later, my entire family came down with their wives and children. I'm the youngest. We're a pretty close family, so we spent the day hanging out and just having a good time. Little did I know what was coming that night. It was about 3 in the morning, and I was bored with nothing to do. I'd spent all the time I could on the computer, and there was nothing on TV, but I soon remembered the spiny pods sitting on top of my television. I was in a pretty daring mood, and I didn't want another false start, so I took 2 of the pods upstairs with me and cut them open in the kitchen. I completely emptied out the contents of both pods and poured a glass of my favorite juice, then proceeded to pour the contents in my mouth, where I chewed them up to a pulp and swallowed the mush with a few gulps of fruit juice. It's been 6 years since that night, but as I sit here and remember it, I'm actually gagging as I'm thinking about it. I sat in the kitchen for a few minutes, then remember walking downstairs into my bedroom. I sat on the bed waiting for something to happen, and after 10 minutes or so had passed, I started thinking it must have been another dud. I sat up to walk into the bathroom, and as soon as I got up, I noticed a strong sense of dizziness come over me. It's working, I remember thinking. I walked into the bathroom with a really strong urge to urinate, but as soon as I stood over the toilet, I noticed that I could not go. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't start to pee. By this time, the effects were almost doubling every minute or so, and my mind was becoming more and more cloudy. I had to pee so bad, and I remembered that every time I get into hot water, I had a hard time not going. So hey, why not turn on the outside jacuzzi? Genius idea, I thought. I started walking out of the bathroom, and as I caught my reflection on the way out, I stopped and stood there staring at myself, not recognizing the person looking back at me. I sat there moving my face around and feeling it with my hands as the effects came washing over me faster and faster. I'd never felt anything like this before, and I was kind of liking it. By this time, I had started to teleport around the house. I have absolutely no memory of walking around. I just remember appearing in different rooms. I opened my eyes, and I was in my bedroom looking into the mirror, getting more and more confused about who was looking back at me. I teleported to the jacuzzi controls and turned it on. The jacuzzi takes a good 20 minutes to heat up, but I just remember suddenly being in my swimsuit and trying to walk outside to get into the warm jacuzzi. I remember having the hardest time trying to lift my legs to walk by now. I got to the edge of the jacuzzi, which was about a 1-foot high ledge to step over, and I thought I was lifting my leg high enough to step over the ledge. But as I went to take my step, I noticed my foot was only a few inches from the ground. I tried again, and the same result. I bent down and lifted my leg up with my hands, and suddenly, I was sitting down in the warm water. I was finally able to urinate, and I was just sitting there in a complete daze. This is where I started to pass in and out of consciousness. The best way to explain it is to say it's exactly like when someone holds my neck and passes me out, and I start coming back from it. I get this weird static noise in the background, like from a television that slowly fades away, and I'm back to normal again. This started happening over and over again. It was even stranger because the noise of the water and jets mixed in with the static and all blend together. This is the scariest part. I'll give a brief explanation of the outlay of our backyard to better convey the situation. Basically, the pool and jacuzzi sit about 25 feet away from the house, and the house faces a steep drop-off that looks out over the city. There's homes on both sides of ours that are separated by a high brick wall. I was situated in a way that I was facing the house with my back to the drop-off and able to see the brick wall to our neighbor's house to my far right, about 50 feet away. Remember, this is now about 3:30 to 4 in the morning, so it is pitch black. I remember looking over at the wall and seeing a dark figure appear. It was more of a black shadow than a person, and it slid up over the wall and started crawling over to me. The moment the first figure started over the wall, it was followed by 3 others that looked exactly like it. I followed them with my eyes as they slid up and over the yard until they slipped into the water in front of me. Then darkness. Now static. I can't see anything, but I can hear the static getting louder and louder. It's building up more and more until it morphs into the sound of the jacuzzi jets. I look up and the figures are gone. Now darkness again. The beings are back. I'm talking to them, but I don't remember what about. Now the static is building up again until it morphs into the jets. I look back up, and they're gone. Darkness swallows me again, and the beings are back. Then I suddenly come back to, and I'm in the house, standing in the downstairs living room dripping wet. I start walking to my bedroom, and I notice the light is turned on. I did not leave it turned on, I think to myself. I walk in, and to my absolute horror, my entire family is there. They're all staring at me with looks of disgust and surprise. My dad approaches me, and in a demanding voice says, "What are you on?" I desperately try to answer nothing, but my mouth won't work. I finally get something close to nothing out, and he answers back, "You're slurring your words so badly I can't even understand you. Now tell me what you are on." I scream back nothing and turn to my bed. My mom is sitting on it, and I lay down next to her. She places her hand underneath me to feel my heart, and I hear her say, "His heart is about to beat out of his chest." I get scared, and in my final words utter, "Moonflower. I took a moonflower." They ask in confusion what moonflower is, and I point to my TV. I raise my hand and yell, "Moonflower," as I point at the pods on my TV. Then darkness. That was my last memory. Suddenly, I wake up and my mom is holding me. I'm sitting on the couch in the office and I see a figure charging toward me. I start batting at it with my hands and screaming, and my mom holds me down and says, "Alex, it's just a hallucination. Settle down." I come back to and look at my arm. There's a bandage over my veins near my elbow and a hospital ID tag around my wrist. I ask what's going on, and my mom tells me I've been in the hospital for the last 24 hours. Apparently, they rushed me to the hospital after I passed out on my bed, and I went crazy when I got there. I was punching the nurses and swearing at everyone, so they had to restrain me on a hospital bed. I started to seizure, so they gave me this stuff that's supposed to knock you out, but it didn't work until they gave me 10 times more than what's normally required. My entire family really was in my room because apparently at some point I walked into the room my sister was sleeping in and mumbled some gibberish. So she went to my parents and woke them up, which woke everyone else up, and they all wanted to see what was going on. To this day, I honestly think I was starting to cross over to the spirit world, and I was looking at actual spirits. Maybe they were looking over me. If I had fallen into the pool, I would have unquestionably drowned. If I had walked over to the edge of the yard, I would have fallen to my death. The fact I didn't kill myself that night is a total miracle. Moonflower, Jimson weed, or whatever is a terrible weed. I will stay away from it like the plague. I literally had no control over my body once it kicked in. I could have murdered my entire family, and I would never remember it. There is not enough money in the world to make me try it again.